How's it going, everybody? CJ here, back in another video. We're doing the first thoughts of a few different M21 commanders, because there's a few core set commanders that, they're solid in certain decks, but they didn't seem great on their own, so we're just going to run through them pretty quickly. The first one we're going to start off here is Barrin. So, Barrin likes ETB triggers, it likes bouncing your opponent's creatures, it likes bouncing your own stuff, specifically your own stuff, so you draw extra cards. So you're going to want to load the deck up with cards that have good ETB triggers for yourself. Stuff like Archaeomancer, you can throw in Gilded Drake, Mole Drifter, the Creature Teferi. All those would be solid in the deck. Throw in Panharmonicon just because you're getting a lot of ETB triggers, so you may as well double them. That seems pretty solid. You need to be able to bounce stuff to your hand, so that way you can replay it and get the ETBs over again, while also drawing cards off of Barrin's ability. So cards like Trusted Advisor in particular I think is really cool with Barrin, and Crystal Shard, both seem very solid in the deck. Then there's cards that you can throw in the deck that just bounce themselves right away just to get easy value. Something like Shrieking Drake, it'll end up being 1 mana, you're drawing a card at the end of the turn, which is pretty solid. So there's not that much I can think of to do for Barrin other than just like ETB based stuff and bouncing it, and I'm not just going to go through every single good ETB trigger creature, so we're just going to leave it at that. So he seems pretty straightforward. Not too much you can do in different ways. There's kind of only one way to really build it, and that's going to be ETBs and bouncing your own stuff. So yeah, just build a deck with ETB dudes. Next, I want to talk about Jolrael. What's the second part of the name? Jolrael, the Recluse. We're talking about the Recluse here, because I don't know how to pronounce any of her name. It's a weird name. So this is an even more straightforward commander. I mean, you don't really want to build a deck around this, I don't think. You get minimal bonuses, and you get very minimal bonuses. So you get to get a 2/2 cat if you draw 2 cards in a turn, which is okay. I mean, it's kind of like Gavi was, except this is on a mono green creature, so it's just not as good. And then there's the pump ability, which is pumping your creatures based on the number of cards in your hand. Which in green, I mean, you're gonna have a good grip of cards usually, but yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be like an overwhelming stampede type of deck. This is just almost a strictly worse elves deck. I feel like Azuri would just be a better deck than the Recluse could ever be. The best cards the most synergistic cards to throw in are just card draw cards, I guess, like Sylvan Library and Rites of Flourishing, cards that guarantee that you're drawing 2 cards during your turn. You can throw in token doublers because you are going to be making tokens, so stuff like Parallel Lives, Doubling Season, Primal Vigor, those are all good includes, but it just doesn't seem like it's a worthwhile commander in my personal opinion. She's probably my least favorite out of all these new commanders. So next up, we're going to talk about Subira, Tulzidi Caravaner. This one's kind of cool. It's a good commander for small dudes. You're just going to fill a deck with 2 power and less creatures that have cool triggers. So that way you can get those triggers and get card draw and stuff like that. You're going to be hellbent a lot of the time because you're not going to have any cards in hand when you activate Subira. But some cards I wanted to talk about for Subira. So first of all, you're going to want to throw Meekstone in the deck because you're having a lot of small creatures. This will just only benefit you. Then there's attacking creatures, so you can get stuff with attack triggers like Robber of the Rich or Captain Lannery Storm, right? That's what her name is, Captain Lannery, whatever. Those have pretty solid attack triggers, which will give you card advantage and ramp. There's a lot of good ones like that, but I wrote down a few really good deals combat damage trigger because there's not as many of those, and some of them are pretty interesting. So there's something like Aki Underminer, which when it deals combat damage to a player, they have to sacrifice a permanent, which is pretty cool. We got Pharopede. So this is really, really specific, but you can remove counters from something when it deals damage. really, really specific. Like, it needs the right meta or just the right board state, but it can be very good against certain decks and certain cards. Like, it's good against Planeswalkers, stuff like that. Grenzo Havoc Raiser. This is probably my favorite card for this deck, because whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to do one of its 2 abilities. You get to go to creature, or you get to do the red card draw thing where you exile a top card of your library. So, oh, it's actually that player's library, my bad. So you get to exile a top card of your opponent's library. So that's kind of a cool card. So, throwing that in this deck, you have a bunch of little goblin tokens or something like that. You say you hit 5 times, you just take top 5 cards of your opponent's library and just cast them that turn. You got Prophetic Flame Speaker. This one does very similar thing. You get to exile top card of your library, play until end of turn. It also has double strike, so I don't know, you're doing double damage. You're doing double 1. It's got trample too for some reason. Skirk Commando, that's another one I wanted to talk about. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can shock something, so it's not bad. But a lot of the cards are just going to be a little underwhelming for Subira. I don't think that she's a bad commander. I would need to see a deck for her to be able to believe that she's really a good commander. Like, I don't know how good she can actually be. Like, I don't know what her peak is. I can't imagine her being stronger than like a 6. But there's definitely some cool shenanigans you can do with it. You can throw it all with 1-drop creatures and throw like Cavalcade in there. Like, there's definitely some synergies, but not a commander I'm going to be building. Next up, I want to talk about Niambi, Esteemed Speaker. So Niambi's probably one of the cooler commanders I'm going to be talking about in this video. Probably the coolest commander I'm going to be talking about in this video. Niambi has Flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can bounce a creature and gain life equal to its mana cost. And you can pay 3 mana, tap her, discard a legendary card to draw 2 cards. Yeah. So a lot of cool stuff can happen here. You know, similar to Barrin, you can throw it add in a bunch of bouncing stuff, so that way you can just continue to bounce things and recast it. So a lot of ETB trigger stuff, and you're gonna want to have a lot of legendary creatures to be able to pitch to the ability, so you can draw extra cards. So I'm just gonna run through a quick list that I came up with of legendary creatures with enters the battlefield abilities in her colors, because these are cards that kind of are double whammies. They fit both parts of what Niambi wants to do. So they're probably some of the best cards to put in the deck. So we got like Azor the Lawbringer, being able to make it so your opponents can't cast instants or sorceries. Pretty solid. Jeru, I don't remember the rest of it. I just wrote Jeru. That's the Planeswalker tutor one. Solid card. Throw in Thalia's Lancers, even though it's not legendary. That can get you a legendary, which is pretty solid. Fibblethip, just card draw on a dude, or pitch it to draw 2 cards. So whichever one you need. Gadwick, a lot of card draw on a dude, and it's reusable, like being able to reuse him later in the game after you cast him for like 2 early game, late game maybe cast him for 4. That seems pretty solid. Lavinia of the 10th, being able to detain your opponent's stuff seems like a solid play, especially being able to repeatedly do that. Legion's Landing, it's a 1 CMC legendary card that you can bounce or pitch, and it's got an ETB effect, so that seems really, really solid in this deck. Just being able to make a few tokens, then get it down and swing with the tokens and flip it seems solid. You also throw in like Mox Amber just because it's really easy to bounce, like really easy to recast, or just 0 mana card that you can pitch late game if you don't need the ramp. Lawan, because it's just a cool card. I mean, ETB bouncing your opponent's stuff, pretty fun. Oath of Teferi and Oath of Jace. The Oaths are pretty good in this deck because they all have ETB triggers and they are also all legendary. Vendilion Click, another cool ETB card that you can also do instant speed, which kind of fits with the flashy theme that she starts off with. It's also legendary. Like, these are all legendary cards. I don't know why I keep saying it's also legendary, but yeah. ETB legendary creatures seem solid in here, like Venser, Yorion. Yorion especially because of the fact that you're going to be... Its ETB is to exile all your creatures and return them, so you get those ETB triggers again. It's just all about flickering, bouncing, doing whatever you want, so that way you just try to maximize the amount of triggers you can get. Throw Panharmonicon in there, get a ton of value. I think it's going to be a big-time value commander. It's going to be similar to Brago, except probably it's going to be very similar to Brago, but lean heavier on the legendary side, so that way you have cards to pitch to the other abilities, so that way you can draw extra cards. And so yeah, that's what I got for, who did I do here? Barrin, the Recluse, I'm not even pronouncing that, Jolrael, Subira, and Niambi. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember, subscribe to the channel. Check me out on Patreon if you really want to support the channel. Hit that like button. Comment down below if you're going to build any of these. If I missed anything major that these guys can do. If one of them was deserving of a single video and you want to tell me off, please do that down below. That'd be great. And we will see you guys next time. Peace out, everybody.